What I want to show you today is how to take a little thumbnail sketch like this that was drawn with a mechanical pencil and bring it into the computer and turn it into a clean vector logo graphic in Adobe Illustrator. So I've transferred a snapshot of this little wave sketch into my computer, and you can put it into Illustrator with a file place command. And the other thing I want to do is I want to turn the opacity of it down to around 30%. That way we can still see it, but we can also draw over it and it's not going to get in the way. And I'm also going to hit Command 2 or Control 2 to lock it. That way it won't get in the way when we're working on it. And I want to use a black stroke, and we'll first start out blocking out this shape with the circle, and I'm going to try like a 40-point stroke. And that looks pretty good so far. And what we want to do now is use our pen tool to start drawing out these curves. Now, when you're using your pen tool, you're going to want to use the least number of points possible. And it'll just make your logo a lot easier to work on if you can do it with a few number of points. For instance, if you get little kinks in your curves, they're a lot easier to work out if you don't have a lot of points in your drawing. And the other thing we can do is we can add on to this curve here. And I want this curve here to kind of meld in with the circle. And again, let's just move these points around till it starts to look nice and smooth. And I think that's starting to look pretty good. You know, like I was saying, if this curve had a lot more points on it, it would be way harder to get smooth. The other thing we can do is, because a lot of this design is circular, we can use the ellipse tool to sort of define some of these curves. And we can go in here with our scissors tool and just cut out the parts we don't want. And that way we're getting really nice, perfect curves. So you get where I'm going here. And eventually we get to drawing like this, and it's still all paths. So what we want to do here is we want to convert this to fills. So let's go to Object, Expand, click OK. And you'll see how Illustrator has added some points in here. We want to get rid of some of these extra points so that, again, the logo is a lot easier to work with. So what we want to do here is let's use our Delete Anchor Point tool. In old versions of Illustrator, if you deleted anchor points, it would flatten out your curves. But now if you hold the Shift key down, you can delete some of these extra anchor points and it'll retain the nice curvature of your paths. But you'll see sometimes even if you do that and you delete the wrong ones, it'll flatten things out. So if you do that, just undo it and delete the other ones. So that's starting to look pretty good. Now the other thing we want to do, let's look at the final logo. I've got it over here. You'll see how there's a lot of thick to thin areas, and this is what makes the drawing look a little more interesting. So to get that with this, we'll go in here with our direct selection tool, the white arrow tool, and we can select some of these paths and just kind of move things over a little bit. And that way we get a lot of nice tapering. Now we want some of the thick areas to be where there would be shadows. So, you know, in this wave, if you think about it, the light is coming down from the top, and underneath the lip of the wave would be the dark part. So that's where we want the thick areas of the wave. We want the thin areas to be kind of like where the highlights would be, like the top of this wave right here. So we could, you know, thin this part out. And we want all these little places to taper out. So we'll thin that out too. And like I was saying, you know, if this curve had 20 points on it, it'd be really hard to work with. Oh, let me show you one more thing. So a lot of people use a tool called the width tool. Let me show you this really quick. So if we were to use the width tool, we could accomplish what we were just doing. So you can go thick to thin like this. The problem with the width tool I've found is if you go object, expand appearance, it adds a ton of points. So that's gonna make things a lot harder to work with. You know, I guess you could go in there, if you wanted to use a width tool, you could use your delete anchor point tool, hold the shift key down. But you know, that's a lot of work getting rid of all these extra points. So, you know, I just like to do it the other way where you don't have to delete all these extra points. This is looking pretty good. So the next thing I want to show you is I want to round out some of these corners. So let's select this whole thing, and in our Pathfinder window, we just want to hit the Unite button. That makes everything one big compound path. Now we can go to our direct selection tool, and you'll see these little dots here, and what that is they allow you to round out corners. So you can do them individually, or sometimes you can do them all at once. The problem is if one of the corners is kind of limited, you'll only be able to drag out all of them to the degree that that one limiting one is stopping you. And I think, for instance, this is stopping right here because of this point. So it's not gonna drag, it's not gonna round out that corner beyond that point. So if you find something like that, you can go in with your delete anchor point tool. Again, hold the shift key and just get rid of those points that are really close to the corners. So again, let's go in here. Let's round these out, and you'll see how this one's less limited. But I want to go in here individually and round out some of these. And the ones that are kind of in these thick shaded areas, I want to round out more, because that's going to add just kind of a nice shadow, like heavy black look to it. And also these tapering areas right here, I just want to round these out as much as they'll round out. And down here, round these out to a pretty good degree too. So there you go. That's how to turn a rough sketch into a clean vector graphic.